What's up, y'all? I'm Will here with Schedulefly, and this is the Restaurant Owners Uncorked podcast, one of the highest rated hospitality podcasts in the world, brought to you by us at Schedulefly. We provide a very simple web-based restaurant employee scheduling software backed by legendary customer service. If you're on pencil and paper or Excel, or you're on some software with tons of bells and whistles and features you don't need or use, Schedulefly is the perfect place for you. Easy to use, point, click, and go, and we'll take great care of you. Schedulefly.com, free trial, check it out. Hey, what's up, y'all? Oh, man. This may be the longest episode we've ever done. This is Steve Palmer, the Indigo Road Hospitality Group. Epic conversation about business, life, hospitality, substance abuse, mental health. I mean, just, oh man, I could have talked to him for 2 more hours too. So we're going to have him back. Steve, you're amazing. Thank you for doing this. Y'all, this episode is all time. Thank you. What's up, y'all? This is a freaking super special opportunity. Steve Palmer, freaking badass legend, hanging out in the studio in person. Infamous Steve
More
Palmer.
infamous than famous, yeah.
Well, first, man, dude, just thank you for being here.
Thanks for being patient.
Dude, this is amazing. This is a heck of an opportunity. I got so many things I want to ask you about. And we've talked before. We talked a long time ago, man. You were in the second book that we did, Restaurant Owners Uncorked Part 2, which we published in like 2015 or 16 or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's been a long time. Indigo Road has grown massively since then. Ben's Friends has grown. So much has happened since then. Just the one thing I always ask everybody, and I know this, but for people that haven't heard your story or listened to you before, just give me the backstory about how you initially got into hospitality.
Geez, I started washing dishes when I was 13 at Yin's Chinese restaurant on Chambly-Dunwoody Road in Atlanta. I was making $3 an hour cash, and I thought I was
baby.
the man.
Yeah, you were. Absolutely.
And I remember, this is going to sound funny, but I had my first food memory, and I call them that because they're like moments in time where you taste something that is completely foreign to you, but you're excited about it. And I was the only American working in the place, and every night they would slide a plate of Chinese food, different things. They wouldn't even tell me what it was. But I remember like going, wow, this is really good. I have no idea what I'm eating. But it was like my first kind of like, food is exotic. Food is memorable. And yeah, I just kind of wandered down the road of like Steak and Shake, Fuddruckers, Houston's. I grew up in Atlanta. And was a mediocre line cook. Most of the guys that I work with now would have fired me. Pretty good grill cook. And then eventually figured out that out in the dining room, those guys weren't burning their hands and getting screamed at by a chef. And, I tell people, it's weird. I turned 55 last Sunday. And I'm the oldest guy in the room most days in my company. But, this is all I've ever done.
Yeah.
35 years. I've never wanted to do anything but hospitality.
Yeah. You just got
It's
early on.
Yeah. The idea of serving other people as a profession, as a good profession. I remember like in 1990, 91, I was working at a restaurant called Magnolia's in Charleston. And at that time, it was the thing.
Yeah.
Lobster on grits on white tablecloths, and like this whole idea of Southern was, we had this dish. It was a deep South egg roll with tasso ham, collard greens, and chicken in an egg roll. But that was the first time I heard people go out to dinner to have an experience. They don't just go out to eat, otherwise they'd stay home. And like today, everybody's, oh, yeah. This was before the internet, before Top Chef, before foodies. And I was 22 years old, and that was profound. And then the idea that as a server, I could make you happy and get paid for it, and my pay was proportional to your happiness. I just thought that was the greatest thing in the world.
Freaking awesome.
I'm like, all I got to do is make people happy.
Yeah.
And that's great. And I just really started the love for this as an experience. And I say this a lot, like we get the front row to life, other people's most intimate moments. First date, hadn't seen old friends in a while, divorce party, the date that led to the divorce party, you know? I mean, like we get, and I never saw that as like a second class job. You know, back in those days, everybody was, well, I'm just doing this till I get a real job.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, this feels pretty real to me. And I don't, So and that just kind of set me on the path that I've never been off of in 30-something years. God, man.
13, Washington. So in Atlanta, you grew up down in Atlanta. Okay. What was siblings?
I have a sister who's 2 years older.
Okay.
We're both adopted. So she has like fair skin and red hair. We don't look anything at all alike. And, you know, my father died when I was 10.
Okay.
So he was a doctor. He got terminally ill. He was diabetic. And so his kidneys started failing. He went blind, couldn't use his leg.
Type 1?
Yeah. And this was the 70s. You know, today he would have gotten a transplant and been fine. But so he died when I was 10. My grandfather, his father, who kind of during those years took me to my ball games, and you know, and he played at Georgia. He was the captain of the Bulldogs in 1930.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
Football?
Yeah,
Wow,
yeah.
okay.
He played football and basketball, and he was, you know, World War II vet, greatest generation, like larger than life. But like that generation, smoked Camel non-filters.
Ooh,
And so
yeah.
9 months after my dad died, he died of lung cancer. And
So you were 10 at this time?
yeah, I was 10 and 11. And so my sister and I, within a year or two after that, we haven't lived under the same roof since. So we have a decent relationship, but we're not super close.
Okay.
Which I wish were different, but she's in Boston. I'm, you know.
Yeah. And your mom?
You know, that mom lives in Atlanta. She's 87. And that relationship, that's kind of central to my narrative. After my dad died, she just wasn't equipped emotionally, mentally. So, you know, I ended up almost homeless by the time I was 13 in Atlanta. And you know, and that was when my addiction, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but I started drinking when I was 11. After my dad died.
Yeah.
I was so, you know, both my heroes were gone in like
Dude, that's
in 9 months, right? And I'm, you know, I'm a big guy, athletic. I mean, those two guys were my heroes. And when that was all kind of gone, earlier at 6, 7, 8, you know, first grade, second grade, I was in the gifted programs, and I was this big when I was 8, not really, but
yeah.
I was athletic, you know, and I was told you're gifted. So like, I'm going to have this gifted life, you know, I'm athletic, I'm smart.
Right. Yeah.
I got it all. And then, so, you know, to then be on the opposite end of the world of that, in hospital rooms after school for a couple of years, and watching your dad die. And my grandfather was probably more traumatic because he got diagnosed with lung cancer and was dead in 8 months. You know, I mean, it was quick.
So he got diagnosed right after your dad died.
Right. My dad died on October 30th. December 17th, my granddad got diagnosed.
Oh, dude.
And that's
Was he your dad's
dad? Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, as a young boy, that's so much of how we learn about being a man, right, is from your father.
Yeah.
And in this case, my grandfather. So it had a profound effect on my life, and started drinking and getting into drugs immediately. And this was, 1980, 1981. And, it's interesting in the recovery world. People will talk about, oh, well, I socially drank for a while and then it got bad later. I was drinking whiskey out of the bottle like day one.
Where did you get it? I mean, just
so
at home
like so many homes in the 70s, there was a wet
cabinet.
bar downstairs in our shag carpet, finished basement, and I just popped the lock off the bar, and I didn't know. I poured it. I got a metal tennis can, tennis balls, and and then went in the woods and started drinking. And then my friends were doing it, and that was right when like Nancy Reagan was starting to learn that we should say no to drugs. Like weed was just kind of I mean, weed had been around for a long time, but it was coming on to So it was it was a weird time.
Damn, I mean that's a young age to get it. But once you started, and then you're like, wait a minute, like, I mean, you had a lot of heartache and pain you were probably trying to process.
A lot.
So that was
and I
had no clue how to do it at that age.
None.
And nobody to help, and a mom that
she didn't help, and I mean, I think what I needed more than anything at that point was just to be told it's going to be okay.
Yeah,
this sucks, and you shouldn't have had to go through this, but it's going to be okay. And I wasn't getting that from my mom. So I really wasn't getting that from anybody. And when you're that age, I think you have a deep sense of the way that it kind of happened back to back. Like, is there something wrong with me? Like, I thought I was going to be gifted, and now I'm in this world, and all of the like innocence of childhood is completely gone immediately.
Yeah, you had to grow up really fast.
And you're watching your dad. I mean, he died over like a 3-year period, and my grandfather was probably more traumatic because it happened so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But my dad was, I mean, both those guys were my size. They were big, outgoing personalities, and my dad was like 140 pounds and 6'5" when he died. I mean, he was he was bones.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that kind of, those moments, that shaped my life for sure. And yeah, drugs and alcohol, man, it was like a match to gasoline. I found them, and I wanted all of it because I didn't want to feel the way I felt.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about addiction. You're not comfortable with who you are, and so you seek things outside of your body. And this, I mean, it can be nicotine, it can be food, it can be gambling, but it's funny, somebody said once, so you have the disease of addiction, but if you break that word down, it's dis-ease. So you're not comfortable.
Dis-ease. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, and you just need some way to. It's just you don't have the tools. Look, it's hard as hell, even as an adult. It's hard as hell to deal with just stuff and find healthy ways.
Find healthy, yeah. I mean, isn't that? I mean, yeah.
Would you? But so you went from there to here to sitting right here right now. Would you change anything if you could go back, or did that shape you to be who you are and lead you to be able to help others? Or like, do you think about that?
It's all connected, sure. my mother is, at the end of her life, and there's a lot of regret there on her part. She, I have told her I forgive you, but it's hard to not look back at the abandonment and wish you made other choices. I am a stepdad to a daughter, and I think there's nothing, no matter what happens, I'll never abandon her. Like, I'm always going to be there. So on one hand, like spiritually and all of that, it all had to happen for me to be here.
Yeah.
I get that. And everything that I have today comes out of all that pain.
Uh-huh.
So I think, but it's hard not to, the loss of the childhood, of the innocence, of the going to your high school prom, like, I don't have any of those memories, right? And so it's yes and no. Definitively, yes, it all had to happen. But man, whew. And I'm, there are lots of people in this world that have had way worse circumstances.
Sure.
Like, I'm not.
No, I got you.
I always feel like I need to, like, hey, I'm not. There's no self-pity here. I've had one hell of a life, and that's what I wanted. On some cosmic soul level, I came here to experience something, man.
And to experience it all out. You're a guy who
fully at all levels.
Yeah, I mean, you don't. You don't do things half baked.
No.
You're all in.
I'm all in, man. All or nothing.
Yeah.
All or nothing.
So,
and that has good and bad, like every choice in life.
I'm much the same. So, I mean, I can, when I see it, I can relate to it. And, but I mean, I'm fascinated, Steve, with just and I know you know this, but it's probably good to hear this. Like the impact you've had on this industry that, as you said in your book, that saved your life twice.
Yes.
By the way, Robbie told me before you came in that your book might be his favorite book.
Oh, wow. That's kind.
Yeah.
I'm not even an author, so that is,
Well, it's
I had a ghostwriter, and
it's the story though.
Right.
The story that's what moves us. Stories are what move us.
Yep.
And from when you're a kid, you want, like, tell me a story.
Tell me a story.
We never get tired of great stories.
It's funny whenever I see people, not all the time, but oftentimes when I just run up to somebody, I'll be like, tell me a story.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, whatever you want to tell me.
Yeah. Tell me a story. We were just talking about The Bear before we started.
Yeah.
I'm going to start watching it now after you and Robbie. And
I was resistant to it because, I'm like, oh, here's a show about our industry. It's really good. I mean, whew.
Well, you say you've had a huge impact on the industry in so many ways. One of the things I've admired so much since I first learned about it from you is Ben's Friends. So I would like to tell that story because to me, this industry has so many stories that are in some way similar to yours, where the industry, from an outsider looking in, I admire so much the industry as a whole because it's so accepting of anybody, anytime, anywhere in their life, whatever their background, whatever they've done. It's a second chance, it's a third chance, it's a fifth chance industry where if you're willing to say, okay, like, I'll be here, and I'll show up when I'm supposed to, and I'll work hard with my teammates, and I'll take great care of my guests, the industry's like, okay. Like, they're not going to go, well, let's see your resume and what was your GPA in college? It's just such a inclusive, meritocratic, just diverse workforce. And it's what is it, the second or third largest workforce in our country? I mean, it's a massively important industry. And I think that, your comment about how people have always felt like a restaurant job is sort of a holding place until you find a quote real job.
Right.
I mean, that's how I always thought too. Like, I had some,
Right.
oh, well, I'm just doing this to make money until I get
So
a
I figured
quote.
it out. Yeah.
And then I think that the more we recognize that it's not just a stopover, but it's a staying place, and it's an important aspect that's woven into the fabric of our society in such a grand, big way. I mean, there's 15 million people that work in this.
Yeah.
I don't think most people understand the importance of the industry to our culture, to our economy, to our society.
They don't.
Which is part of why I like doing this podcast, because I like sharing stories,
Right.
and the more people that listen. I mean, look, I'll put it this way: when we started Schedulefly in 2007, and we started doing this podcast in like 2010, and we started telling stories. I thought at the time, okay, I'm going to learn what it takes from a lot of really successful restaurant people to be good in the restaurant business, and like I'm definitely starting a restaurant one day, because like how hard could it be? You get, like you see it, it's like, well, it's just what. It didn't take me long to realize, A, I don't have what it takes. B, this is way, way harder than I thought. And C, holy crap. Like, I have a lot of respect for people that are in this business that do it well, because it's freaking hard. Like,
it is
really freaking hard. And so this brings me back to the industry is so supportive and is there for so many people, but there also are a lot of people that work hard, play hard, and you're around alcohol, and you're around a lot of people that get involved in substances, and you've experienced it, and you've been, how many years have you been sober now?
November 5th will be 23.
Okay. Congrats.
Which is wild.
That's amazing. But you went through a very, very traumatic experience with a close friend that led to Ben's Friends. So I want to talk about Ben's Friends for a little bit, if we could.
You're the only other person that has ever used that language to describe our industry other than me. I say that all the time. As long as you're willing to work hard and be a part of the team, everybody's welcome.
No matter what. You've been in prison twice? Okay. Well,
okay.
You have an opportunity to prove yourself.
Literally in almost every talk I give, I talk about how everybody's welcome. And I find that...
I probably stole it from you. Like, it's probably where I got it from, but I believe it.
I was excited. I'm like, holy crap, he's... it's so wonderfully diverse, and we have a saying at our company: everybody is welcome at our table, even the people we disagree with. And I say this to the teams in this era where people need everyone to believe the way they do.
Yeah.
I'm like, can you imagine if we stood outside the restaurant door and said, before we decide if you're going to come in or not, what are your beliefs?
Yeah.
We don't value judge in hospitality, and that's very hopeful for me. Like, and I feel like I'm maybe ambassador is too self-important, but I'm a carrier of that message that like, man, the world just gets more divided. And we're going to all realize it was social media and phones that ruined it all. But
we can talk. We'll talk about it.
And I'm going to get to your real question. But what I love about a restaurant is it is. If you show up and you work hard and you're willing to be a part of the team, there's a place for you. And not only is there a place, you can thrive.
Yes.
I mean, I have a GED.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I was out of high school by 8th grade. That was high school in Atlanta. We didn't have middle schools.
Yeah.
And here I am.
Yeah.
And it's all because of the industry.
Yeah.
But to your point, so Ben Murray, I was the product of an intervention in 2001. Thank God. I had lost touch with Ben. We opened a restaurant called Canoe in Atlanta. Ben was great, and we had a lot of fun. We did a lot of drugs together. We drank a lot together. I mean, Ben was a fun guy. I lost touch with him, and a friend in Atlanta, like 10 years later, connected us and said, hey, if you ever need an extra set of hands, Ben has cleaned up his act. And, you know, this was 2016. We weren't talking about mental health the way we are now. We, you know, cleaned up his act is like, I didn't ask a lot of questions. And he came to Florence, South Carolina, to his restaurant called Town Hall, and we opened the restaurant. I would have never used the word depressed when I saw Ben. He had a big smile. I never saw him take a drink. And he disappeared. And he ended up shooting himself in the hotel room that we had put him up in. And as I called his 80-year-old mother, the story kind of unfolded. He'd been in and out of detox like 6 times. He would get out and wouldn't go to those meetings. And, you know, the crazy thing about that night, there were 3 sober chefs in our kitchen. Scott Crawford had come from Raleigh to help me open. Eric and Elliot, 2 guys that worked for me. If Ben would have just said, hey, you got 5 minutes after work? I can't seem to get this thing that you seem to have, sobriety. Can you help me? They would have done anything for him. And so Mickey Bax, our co-founder of Ben's Friends, is a Charleston restaurant sober guy. I called him and I told him what had happened. And we had already, months prior, we were like, man, we need to do something to help our industry. We don't know what that looks like, but we need to do something. So we said, let's start a support group. We'll call it Ben's Friends. And we thought it would be this little Charleston thing, and you know, a 1-hour group led by sober restaurant people for people in the industry that want to get sober. Anthony Bourdain killed himself like 6-9 months right after that, and like overnight, New York Times reached out, LA Times reached out, Forbes, who published my book, reached out. What's Ben's Friends? What is this? And so they started writing articles, and I published the book, Say Grace, How the Restaurant Industry Saved My Life. And people started, you know, a sober chef in Portland reached out and said, hey, I want to start a Ben's Friends. So I think it's 24 cities right now. It's, you know, San Francisco to Brooklyn to New Orleans to Chicago. We just launched in Miami. And there's this whole wonderful crowd of misfits and beautiful people that are really carrying this message about, like, you can be in hospitality and not drink, and you can thrive. And it, you know, it very luckily, serendipitously coincided. And I think a lot of it was Anthony Bourdain in terms of, like, we've got to talk about mental health. Like, this is nuts. We're, you know, drinking and drugging every night. At some level, it was celebrated by the media, you know, the kind of bad boy chef with the tattoos and the bourbon collection. And then suddenly these people started dying. And it was like, oh, you know, maybe we shouldn't be celebrating this. Maybe we need to talk about 18-hour work days and
Yep.
And the people that are, I get asked all the time, well, did the industry make you an addict? No. Is it a playground for people with addictive personalities? Yes. Thankfully, that's changing, though.
Yeah, man. That's, I just imagine him, Ben, being there with y'all and being like, well, why can't I get this?
Right.
This is 2016?
Yes.
Yeah, and it's
Can't
amazing.
believe it's been November will be the 8th anniversary of Ben's Friends, which is
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's fortunately we're talking a lot more, not enough, but we're talking a lot more about mental health now.
Yep.
I think, Ben, Anthony Bourdain, you see a lot of men that decide, I don't know why, but I can't do it, so I'm checking out.
right.
And this goes back to, I mean, I'm 50, you're 55, we're roughly the same age, but when we were growing up, I mean, if you're a dude, you suck it up.
Absolutely.
You don't, if you're down or you're depressed, you're like, dude, get over it.
There were 2 cardinal rules in the restaurant business. You don't steal and you show up no matter what.
Yeah.
No matter what. You've been out all night, who cares?
Yeah.
Take a shower, come to work.
Get over it.
You didn't no call, no show on your shift. You didn't steal. You didn't show up drunk,
Yeah.
You might be hungover, often hungover, but you made it happen. Very machismo kind of.
Yep. And part of that is, it's almost like a self-fulfilling thing because you have a GED. People that, I mean, one of the great things about being in a restaurant is just the activity, the excitement, the constantly changing stimuli. I think that there are a lot of people that, we kind of put everybody in this box, this education system, like go sit at a desk and be quiet and listen. And then if you do well, you are rewarded with a degree and then you get this job. And that's fine for some people. But,
yeah, I would have been an abject failure at that life.
Yeah.
And I don't say that. That's not a criticism of anybody. It's self-awareness. But I would have failed. I would be making $5 an hour.
Well, if not for this great industry, right?
This industry that is so awesome.
Yeah.
That gets so much shade thrown at it. And I'm like, this is the coolest industry in the world. I will forever be. Katie Button and I were having this conversation the other day. Love Katie. And we feel this compulsion to talk about how great the industry is because especially post-COVID, I was so disappointed in the food media, and I'm not going to name specifically which ones, that were I called it owner shaming. Like every other week, when we first weren't getting people back to work, if you were paying people more, they would be coming, which turned out not to be true. Because we were throwing money at people and we couldn't
get anybody to show up.
Yeah. I mean, I was so disappointed. It's just like one article after the other at a time that we were fighting to survive. And I'm like, I need somebody talking about how great this industry is because we need more people to work in it. And certainly we have to make the industry better and more attractive to people. But the amount I was so distraught about can you write about anything positive?
Yeah.
And pre-COVID, right, that was the Me Too thing and Mario Batali and all of that so I understand there was a reckoning that needed to happen, but I still argue the best people I know in my life are restaurant people.
Yeah. No, I could not agree more. I mean, people that, look, why? Because people that really live and breathe and are just wired for hospitality. What is hospitality? To me, it's giving a gift to people.
Yeah.
It's giving your love and your care and your time and your attention. It's making people feel good about being somewhere.
That's
it's just
right.
No different than if you had, we're going to have a dinner party at our house, and you're gonna clean and you're gonna have everything. You want people to come and enjoy it and have fun and smile and leave and wave goodbye, and that they were like, that was freaking awesome. That's hospitality at at huge scale. I mean, but that's really what it's all about. And so people that are in hospitality that really love it, that really get it, it's not about themselves. It's about leveraging their love to make other people feel good. I just think it's giving yourself, it's giving a gift. I think there's just this weird idea that restaurant owners are these guys and gals that just show up and say hello and buy some people drinks and they make a lot of money and and it's like, that's what I thought. That's why I was like, I want to start a restaurant. That's cool. Like,
from the outside it looks so glamorous.
It looks so glamorous. I remember Scott Maitland at Top of the Hill told me this one time. He's like, that's like 0.1% of my time is that. And they see me and they're like, oh, that looks awesome. He's like, let me tell you what 99.9% of the time is like. So, well,
I also think, and this doesn't get talked about much, so all of that you just said, right, is you're talking about giving. Tell me a group of people in every community in America that raises more money for charitable causes than restaurant people. You can't do it. Mm-mm. You cannot do it. No. Because every single nonprofit that are all super worthy that say we want to have a fundraiser, what are you going to do? You're going to serve food. You're going to get that food donated. Hey, let's ask a chef if they'll be willing to. That'll help sell tickets. We're such a charitable group of people.
Totally. That people. It's just kind of take for granted. Like, oh well, the restaurants.
Yeah, we'll just do that. I mean, we have our annual. Mickey and I also have something called Feed the Need that Mickey started in Charleston, and our annual fundraiser is coming up in like 10 days, 12 days. Last year we raised $950,000 for Tri-County Ministries and for the neighborhood house, which is the soup kitchen in the middle of the city. And, we did that in one night. One night, $950,000. Yeah. And there's 24 chefs in the room, and they're all there smiling. And, So when people throw shade at our industry, I'm like, man, you don't even know what you're talking about.
Well, so you're an ambassador or
till the day I take my last breath. Look at me, man. I mean, like, there's a big ass company behind me that like I have no business owning or being a part of, and everything that I've done has been in service of that, and largely by studying those before me. By guys like Danny Meyer that took my phone call and, agreed to write a foreword for my book, and Michael Anthony at Gramercy Tavern that I think I ate at Gramercy so many times that he was either going to get a restraining order or he was going to be my friend, and he chose to be my friend. And, I'm still such a student of life, but of our industry, because it's always changing. And I really am getting to be the old guy in the room, and that doesn't feel super great. But I'm looking at, like, what's that young chef doing? Mm-hmm. A lot of it I don't resonate with, but there's little moments of brilliance that like somebody will open a restaurant serving a thing, and I'm like, God, I would have never thought of this. Yeah. And that's interesting. And it's packed. And, will it be around in 10 or 15 years? I don't know. There's a lot of fads in our industry, but our industry is always changing, and that's what makes it so amazing.
That's what makes it awesome. Yeah, absolutely. You have a growth mindset. Have you ever read that?
I know. I have like 50 books on my desk that I'm like, I love to read. I love reading a book. I'm always reading a book. It is on my desk in the pile, but I have not gotten a growth mindset.
I mean, it's just, you have a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. I had a fixed mindset growing up, and I learned to have a growth mindset, and the fixed mindset just being like, okay, I'm not good at that. Okay, well, like, I'm not a math guy or whatever it is.
Right.
Okay, but you can be if you want to be. Just because it doesn't come to you naturally, you can learn to. So you've learned to run a freaking massive business that you probably would have said as a young man, that's not what, I can't do that.
Yeah, I didn't have that confidence.
Yeah.
I didn't have confidence about much of anything except the ability to be a good waiter.
Yeah.
That was like, I'm like, I know I'm good at that.
Yeah.
But running a business, borrowing money, developing real estate, I mean, that's not me. That's somebody else you're speaking about.
But
So-
you've learned. You've
Yeah,
learned through.
I have through a lot of mistakes. We were like 4 restaurants, 5, just in Charleston. This was probably 2014, 10 years ago. And it still had pretty bad imposter syndrome. Like the attic, the old tapes were still like, I'm going to
Yeah.
screw this all up at any minute.
Right.
But I was like, all right, it's working. Why is it working? And so the smartest thing I did was I said, we're gonna have leadership conferences. We're gonna get everybody in the room. I'm collaborative by nature, and we're gonna whoever's in that room is gonna decide how we're gonna go forward.
Mm-hmm.
And so our first leadership conference had 4 people. Our last one had 200.
Yeah, this is so 10 years ago. So you had 4. How many? You have hotels and restaurants.
We
Now, how
have
many?
36 restaurants and 6 hotels.
When did you open your first hotel?
4 years ago.
Which one was that?
Skyline Lodge in Highlands.
Yeah. Okay.
It's so fun up there. And so we started very consciously in 2014 working on our culture and working on like what kind of company do we want to be? And I will tell you if that's the reason we're successful, because we don't like the word corporate. There's a senior team of like 26 people now that have all been with me for 8, 9, 10 years that have totally helped shape and bought into the idea of internal hospitality, that the employees, in order for our guests to have a great experience, our employees have to first have a great experience. That is easy to say and hard to do. It's never been harder, but
Never been harder for your guests. For your employees.
Just to be in the business.
Yeah. Is that because of how big you've gotten, or is it just because of?
No, that's I think in some ways it's easier being big.
Okay.
It's never been harder to be in the hospitality business, and people have never wanted to go out to dinner more. So, if you get good at it, you can be really successful. But the most successful thing we've done in the last 10 years is work on our culture and how we treat our employees, hands down. Danny Meyer set the road when he wrote Setting the Table. I don't know another company. I don't brag about much. I don't know another company that works as hard on their culture as we do.
Yeah.
We don't always get it right. But I always say we try to be quick to apologize, quick to take ownership when we miss. We make bad hires. We bring in the wrong leader. They got a big, impressive resume, and we then realize that doesn't mean anything.
Right.
What's
if
in
it
your
doesn't
heart
fit with the culture.
Yeah. And so we are obsessively relentless about trying to be a better company with the like higher purpose of we want to leave the industry better than we found it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's like, I learned that in Boy Scouts when you're out hiking on the trail, like leave it cleaner than you found it.
Yep.
That's what we want to do in the industry. And I think in ways we're doing that.
Well, you've got a director of culture who came on this podcast.
Yeah, Chris.
He's awesome.
What a sweetheart. He sent an email yesterday. We just opened Junto Sushi and Barkapoo in Bentonville, Arkansas. And he sent this email last night to all the senior people that helped open it. And it was the sweetest, kindest, like, I see the way people in our company speak to each other and the things that they will do for each other. You know, my birthday was Sunday. I checked in to the Hyatt Centric. We have Mizu over there. And in my room were 4 birthday cards from the staff, a happy birthday banner. Like we just work really hard on treating each other well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's cool to watch.
Well, that's one of the things that I just loved when I found out that y'all had this director of culture. Because I think, you know, there's that Stanley Drucker quote, whatever it is, like culture eats strategy for breakfast or
Amen.
whatever. I mean,
Amen.
It's an interesting thing, Steve. I talk to guys and gals like you, and then I talk to people that are CEOs of, you know, restaurant franchises.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a different, there's a place for everything, but that world seems more corporate, if you know.
Yeah.
And that's cool. And there's people that are well suited for that and to run that well and to drive growth in that world. I really enjoy the authenticity and honesty and vulnerability and just rawness of conversations with guys like you, because you're not like, there's nothing I could probably ask you anything right now about any drug you've done or whatever, and you would talk about it. And I don't want to, but I love that you're willing to be who you are and be authentic about that. And I think that people in the world of independent hospitality gravitate to people like that. They go, well, and this is going to get back to the mental health thing. I'm flawed. I've screwed up. I've made mistakes, but so is he. And look where, like, maybe I can. And I think so I applaud you for being, there are people that aren't honest about that stuff or don't talk about it or will cover it up or whatever it is. And that's fine. But, you know, the mental health thing, we're talking about it more in our society now, which is great. Guys don't often talk about it as much. I mean, I've had issues with anxiety and depression, so it's something I relate to, and used to have, you know, issues with using alcohol to deal with that.
Yeah,
and I don't anymore, and I'm thankful for it. But I see a lot of people, when you hear these stories all the time, it's like, you know, this guy took his life because he had these issues and didn't know where to turn. What do y'all talk about on your team? Like, how do y'all educate your staff? If you're dealing with stuff like, this is how we can help you, or how you should, you need to get help. Like,
right.
People need to know that it's cool to, I guess my point is, like, I felt like for you and I probably growing up, if you had to get help, you know, air quotes, that was weak or whatever.
Yeah.
And now it's like, no, that's actually the strongest thing you can do.
Right.
Covering it up and hiding it, that's
so flawed.
Yeah, because that's where you hear these tragic stories.
That's
like,
where the real
I have
sickness.
Friends now who've had their sons have, you know, taken their, and you're like, wait a minute, that kid was an all-star athlete and a scholar and whatever. And so there's this weird thing in our society where it's like, that's BS. Like, we gotta get past this. Like, we need young men, young women, everybody to know, like, if you need help, like, there's ways to get that help. And it is a strong thing to go get it.
Absolutely.
Lean into that. Like, people want you to do that. But I'm curious how y'all address that at Indigo Road.
Sure. So we have a saying that applies to anything. It can be to running a plate of food or asking for mental health. Asking for help is a sign of intelligence, not a sign of weakness.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
You know, and because we all need help.
Yeah.
I mean, on the work front, I look at my team and say, don't forget, I've never done this before either. I think it makes them nervous sometimes, but I'm like, I've never grown a company, like taking one restaurant to 40 businesses. Like, I'm still learning. On the mental health front, I mean, I have a disease that tells me I don't have a disease.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you don't meet
Yeah.
cancer patients who say, I don't have cancer.
Right.
They're like, nope, I'm getting chemo. I'm doing whatever the hell I need to do. You meet addicts who are like, I'm fine all the time. Even now, 23 years, I got shingles this year. I do not recommend it. It is super painful.
Yeah.
I had to be put on opioids, Percocets. I didn't abuse them. I took them as prescribed. Start my brain. Maybe I can manage this. Maybe addiction is cunning, baffling, and powerful. Mental health is bipolar. I've had friends like that. To me, is one of the saddest things. At the Indigo Road, we make it really okay to not be okay. Ben's Friends is a part of our narrative. You're going to hear about it around the company. We offer free mental health. You want to go to therapy, we'll pay for it. We're constantly bringing in different resources, whether it's yoga classes. Well, I mean, wellness is such a big, broad subject these days.
Yeah.
And that's good. I mean, it's from what you eat to, I get asked a lot, what do I do if I see somebody struggling? And I always say something.
Yeah.
Like the worst thing we do, and I said, look, if you sit somebody down and say, I think you're drinking too much, it's probably not going to go well.
Yeah.
They have a disease that tells them they don't have a disease.
Golly,
If you sit down with somebody and say, man, I love you and I'm really worried.
Yeah.
That's going to hit a lot different. But the thing about an addict, most people, the first time they are presented with the information that perhaps they are addicted, do not go, you're absolutely right. Can I go to rehab? It just doesn't go down that way.
No, probably get defensive.
It very. But I always say have the conversation, because you might be the first that plants the seed, so that when the fourth person 9 months later says, man, I'm really worried about you, they go, man, all these people are telling, have the conversation. There doesn't have to be judgment attached with that conversation.
Yeah.
It can be love.
Yeah.
I just try to create an environment. We don't drink at work. We don't do shift drinks. If we're going to leave it better than we found it, we got to clean it up. What other industry drinks at work? That's just not,
Right.
I mean, if we want to be seen as a professional industry, knock off the horse shit, pardon my language.
Yeah.
Knock it off. I mean, just make the environment better.
Yeah.
Don't yell and scream at each other. Don't, make it a place where your central nervous system, until 8 o'clock when the tickets are printing and you're running. But when you walk in the door, it should be a calm environment. It should not be the place is on fire and we're yelling and screaming at each other and the chef's got a bottle of whiskey on the line.
Well, take yourself seriously. Don't give yourself excuses. We're willing, if you want to show up and work hard, that's awesome.
Right.
Whatever your history is, whatever. And this is a great outlet for people that don't want to fit into that corporate world or sit behind a desk, but we can still take our industry professionally, because it really absolutely is. Yeah. I mean,
we can have fun, but still be professional at the same time.
Yeah. I love that. A disease that makes, that's interesting, man. I've never heard that.
Yeah. It's somebody said it to me in early sobriety, and they were like, you have a disease that tells you don't have a disease.
Yeah.
And I can remember in early sobriety, my AA sponsor, who I'm breaking his anonymity right now, he probably knocked me over the head, but whatever. He's been my sponsor the whole time. And he's this crusty old dude who I love dearly. But he got up, he was 22 years sober, and I'm 2 months sober at this point. I'm I always use early sobriety. It's like when you look at an infant and they like, oh, that's my hands. Like you literally are learning to do everything again. But he said, I'm no further away from the drink than the day I walked in the door. And that made absolutely no, I'm like, you've been sober 22 years. You're cured, even though, you know, and he's like, no, I'm not. And I didn't understand that. At 23 years, I do understand it because I've seen people with 15 years of sobriety start drinking again. And to a lot of people, they would say, how is that? How could you possibly? Because you have a disease that tells you don't have a disease.
Yeah.
And it's always there.
Yeah.
And sometimes for an addict, if you've lived your life in a certain level of drama and chaos, getting arrested, overdose, and then everything gets really good, and like your life exceeds your expectations, that can be really hard to deal with.
Yeah.
You know?
Which is a weird thing, but it really can be. And it's almost like you self-sabotage.
There it is. You know, addicts, man.
It's scary because I'm used to things not going well. And if things are going well, then
I'm going to screw it up.
Yeah.
Or I don't deserve this.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
That's a big one.
Those deep wounds, man. I mean, my father died like it happened 45 years ago. It's still, and I don't mean that like from a victim or no. But it has shaped the narrative of my life. I still have abandonment issues.
Yeah.
You know?
Wow.
Sometimes the hardest thing in sobriety is when everything goes right.
Yeah.
Just to like, don't blow it up.
What's going to go wrong? Right.
and that's, you know, that is the journey, right? Learning to be comfortable in your own skin. That's the journey for all of us, whether you're an addict or not.
Sure.
But learning, like self-acceptance is such a big piece. You were saying something earlier that I like when my dad and granddad died, I just remember profoundly thinking, I'm not as good as the other kids. Right? And that informed all of my behavior.
Yeah.
And self-acceptance, like just being okay with the warts, the scars, the shortcomings, that's a big thing in life.
Well, yeah, especially when you went through this period where you're like, okay, I'm gifted.
Right.
I'm athletic.
Oh, yeah.
I got this badass dad who's a doctor.
Yeah,
and
man,
my granddad.
All the things. I'm going to have this above average. It's the path is clear.
Yeah.
I'm going to have this above average life. I have had an above average life, by the way.
You have. I would say that so much of that. That's why I asked you that question earlier, Steve. It's like, would you change things? And you've had a path that you could have never predicted, but
no way.
but so many of things that, you know, it's that old saying, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. Or you know, if you read like Stoic philosophy, like Ryan Holiday wrote a book called The Obstacle is the Way that I read that I really loved. Is like, like leaning into these challenges is what makes us better and sharpens us and makes us stronger and makes us wiser. And now you're at this stage in your life where now you're the wise guy in the room, right? Like the dude who has a lot of like the experience and the wisdom and the scars and the, wounds, but you see life a lot clearer and you start to see, okay. And maybe sometimes you see people like you have to tell them, I love you, I'm concerned. And sometimes they're going to have to be defensive or whatever and go through other people telling them until they finally, but you can kind of see it. But you just, I think it's an important thing. I don't want to, and I want to talk about some restaurant stuff here, but like that mental health piece where you said it's important to say something. That's what a lot of people are scared because it's hard. And you're like, how's this person going to respond? Like, are they going to tell me to go F myself?
Most likely they're not going to respond well.
They're probably not going to respond well.
No, they're not.
But worse is not saying something and then, like what if you had thought, like you didn't recognize what was going on with Ben, but if you had and you'd been like, I don't want to say anything or whatever, and then something happened, you'd always been like, damn it, I should have said something, like, so you should say something because you don't want to the opposite of like getting a bad reaction is not saying anything and then getting a really bad outcome because the person decided they couldn't deal with it anymore and took their life. So saying something's like you almost owe it to them.
You do. You owe it to yourself.
And to yourself. Tell me, okay, so you got all these restaurants, you're all around the Southeast, you got hotels, this, like I've been trying to figure out, Steve,
where the hell I'm going?
Well, no, I've been trying to figure out, like,
what's the plan?
Because you don't know where you're going, and you're just going one day at a time.
There is no plan.
There is no plan.
By the way.
Yeah. This has been a weird year. We were talking before we started recording about election years, and you said something I thought I'd never thought about that, but it's just been a weird year in general. There's just more restaurants that maybe they got through their PPP money or their restaurant,
right.
whatever they got through, and then they're not making it. Like we're seeing more close. Some of that is there are harder environments. Like if you're in Denver right now, I think Juan Pedro said that it's more expensive to open a restaurant in Denver right now than it is to open in Manhattan because he's doing both. Like,
right.
So there's certain environments where it's hard. The tip minimum wage in some places is like $17-18 an hour.
And that's not sustainable. And anyway, I interrupt.
I mean,
please.
I'm trying, I think I look at this kind of macro, 10, 12 years, money was free.
Uh-huh.
So that was both for businesses and in essence, the consumer, So now we're in this place where, okay, like reality's kind of coming back around where it does, you can't just go borrow money for 2% or whatever. And,
right.
And the inflation is just jacked up through the roof. So that affects businesses. God, it affects restaurants because you're affected. I mean, like every aspect of the economy runs through a restaurant. Consumers are affected by it. Where are we right now? Where are you all? How is the business going? What are you seeing? And tell me about what you were saying about, election years. I thought that was quite interesting.
Somebody told me that. I don't even have any basis except that I experienced it. Somebody said, oh, yeah, in election years, restaurants are down. And in 2016, Hillary and Donald, we went down like 10%. And there was no macroeconomic influence. Everything was fine. We just were down. And so the whole year, even though you're going, oh, yeah, well, they said election years are down, you don't know that because you haven't gotten to the other side. And in 2017, everything shot back up. And I went, oh, it really is true. 2020 was, that year, like from an election side, nothing was normal about 2020.
Nothing, yeah.
So, yeah, this year has been weird. We came out of COVID and it was like, oh, we're up 20%, we're up 30%, we're up to, we're down 4% over here at this restaurant. We might be up 1% over here at this restaurant. It's been a complete mixed bag. Construction, everything is over budget. Nothing is on time. It is a miserable time to try and open, and yet we keep doing it. But where are we? The tipped wage is a real thing. So we have an OCU in D.C., and the minimum wage is we have 4 years left on our lease. And the restaurant's packed, busy. The team does a great job. By the time our lease is up, it'll be $18 an hour with no tip credit.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll be able to renew our lease. We might move it over to Virginia across the river, 10 minutes away. And the disconnect between, and I want to be careful, I want to choose my words. I love to see our people make a ton of money. I think that's great. I want everybody to win.
Yeah.
Always. The demand in the private sector for higher minimum wage, higher wages, yes, let's do all of that. Your $10 burger's now $20. It's just macroeconomics. It's not, it's just math.
Yeah.
Our labor costs have gone up 25% in the last 2 years.
25%.
25%. And, 21, 22, 23, I think if most operators were honest, we had such a hard time getting anybody to apply that if you came in the door and you were good and you were asking for more than we had budgeted, we're probably going to pay you. So on one hand, people say, well, that's good. That, people can negotiate from a position of strength for their salary, and I'm for all of that. But there is a trickle down, trickle up, trickle sideways, or whatever you want to. For every action, there's a reaction, and landlords aren't charging us less rent.
Yeah.
So think about this. It's more expensive to build a restaurant. It takes longer. The rents have never been higher. Labor is up 25%. Where are we? What do you think? Does that all sound good to you?
It doesn't.
When you look at the Indigo Road at a macro level versus last year, we're absolutely less profitable this year.
Yeah.
We're not falling off a shelf, but we're also really good operators.
Really
we
good.
spend a lot of, we have a director of culture, but we also have a director of financial operations who just helps chefs learn about food cost and labor cost, and he does that all day long, and he's really good at it.
Justin?
If you're a
Is
first,
that Justin?
yeah,
He was
that's
in
right. Justin was here.
Yeah.
Justin's one
Love
of
that dude.
the best people on the planet.
Yeah.
But if you're like a first-time operator right now, I can't imagine it's a lot of fun because this is not fun for us.
Yeah.
It's hard, and the volatility. December was our best month in company history ever. January was one of the worst. So in a 30-day swing between just normal declines in revenue, because it's January, it snowed in D.C. and Nashville, so we were closed extra days. That's how volatile our industry is, even for the Indigo Road.
Yeah.
We went from biggest month ever to maybe the worst month ever, and overnight. And speaking of Justin, he was pale and looked like he was going to throw up every minute of the day. And we pulled ourselves back out, and but where are we now, man? It's hard, and yet it's also really good because people like to go out to dinner.
Yeah.
So if you can do it well, there's room. I think you're going to make less money. We're going to stay in the South. Somebody called me about California, and I'm like, there's no way. I love, driving down the Pacific Coast Highway. Who doesn't love that?
Yeah.
There's no way. There's no way. You click onto Eater LA and read about how many restaurants are closing. And again, I'm not wandering into the political soup. I'm just saying.
Well, it's just
people pass laws that they have no concept, which I can go down the rabbit hole of why we should have term limits for every position in government. But, these laws get passed in a vacuum, and people don't realize what the effect is.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to put your small business out of business by you're burdening small business owners in the name of we're working for everyone and we want everyone to come up. Yes, but you're crushing small business when you do that. So there's got to be a balance. I'm not saying it's one or the other, because isn't that the problem with our world right now? You're either red or you're blue. There's no middle ground or compromise, but we weren't making a lot of money anyway. And if you just keep jacking up our wages, we're not going to make it, because you're not going to pay $30 for a burger. And I'm being dramatic. You're not going to pay.
Oh, it'll get there eventually.
Most places you're paying $20.
That's why restaurants in LA are closing. Because, sure, as a voter, oh yeah, that sounds great. Minimum wage should be like,
Take away
I'm
the
all
tip
for
credit.
that. Like these greedy,
even though the waiters are making $100,000 a year.
Yep.
Take away the tip credit so they can also make $18 an hour. Well, they were making $3. You just increased the wage $15 an hour times how many servers, and you don't think that's going to affect the business owner?
Yeah, exactly. You increase their wage 500%. Like, Does your business, can
anybody's business sustain that?
That's the interesting thing. And it's unfortunate for those cities that are on the sort of the bleeding edge of that, the tip of that spear, like Denver and like LA and like some of these cities, because they're going to, that's going to have a very serious impact and
decimate.
And hopefully, unfortunately, for those operators, but the industry as a whole and the consumer and the voters start going, okay, well, I've heard about now what's going on out here or out there or whatever. Look, you wouldn't operate and you wouldn't want to open up out there right now. I just had this conversation with my son the other day, and I always think in terms of like graphs and stuff. And so I drew him this graph of like risk and reward.
Yeah.
And I was like, you want to live, because he made a bad decision recently. And I'm like, that decision was the risk was really high and the reward was really low. Like the potential reward was short-lived and low. And I'm like, you want to live in this world where you're taking low risk for a potentially high reward, but you know that your risk has got to be like your downside's really low if this goes awry.
Right.
Well, if you open a restaurant in California right now, the risk is pretty massive. The reward is pretty low. That's not the quadrant you want to operate in. Like and if you look at the demographics, people are they're moving to the Southeast. They're moving to the Southwest. Over the next few decades, there'll be more and more of that.
Yeah.
You live in Charleston, I live here. The growth
we're booming.
Is amazing.
And I'm so glad I went through COVID in the South.
Oh, God.
Good Lord. My friends in New York, I mean, it was like a year and a half later, and they're still trying to get back to full speed. And I'm like, I just, and again, I want to be careful. I'm not saying South because I'm a Republican or a Democrat. Like, I don't know. I always say life's better in the South. I'm a Southern boy. Go Dogs. I like Southern hospitality, but it's just better here.
Man, I'm with you, dude.
It's just better. People are like, would you ever open a restaurant in New York? And my business partners work in New York. And I'm like, no way. No way. I'm good. DC's as far north as we've gone. And that
may,
yeah.
Right.
And DC's been hard, man.
Yeah.
I mean, our operating partner, Kimball, who he made that. We opened that Oku DC and it wasn't doing well. And he moved there and willed that restaurant and it kills it. And we've got a great team and we'll figure something out. But a lot of restaurants in DC now are going to the service charge model where it's automatically added. So the IRS views that different than gratuity. And it is put into a pool and an hourly wage is arrived upon, and that's how they're paying people. And a lot of servers have quit and have gone to Maryland or Virginia and have, the tipped economy is not a bad thing. Like, that's another thing that everybody throws shade. I was a tipped employee for 10 years. It allowed me to pay my bills, put a roof over my head. I don't think there's anything wrong with the tipped economy. I don't know why we suddenly decided it was bad.
Well, both, and I don't want to get into politics either, but both candidates for president have said, I don't want to tax tips, which is that could be kind of cool. I
guess. I'm cheering for it because that might, the folks on our team would do really well. Tipped economies have put people through college. I just, somewhere 4, 5, 6 years ago, somebody decided this was a bad idea. And I'm like, why are we breaking, why do we break things that aren't broken? Why do we say, well, let's try and fix this? Why don't we just leave that alone and focus on,
We always have new mania. I mean, it just something new. I got to do this, change this or fix that. Tell me about, why did you get into hotels?
I get asked that a lot. People are like, It would have been easier to just stay in my lane. I don't know, man. Why don't I just open Oak and Okus and sell them to private equity? I like to make things hard in the spirit of being creative, I guess. We were doing food and beverage in boutique hotels because a lot of hotel developers know they don't know anything about food and beverage, so they call guys like me to come do their restaurant. And I was looking at either the third party management company that was managing the hotel side of things and going, we could be doing that better. Just giving better hospitality. Forget all the technical, because there's a lot more into rate management and position in the market, and but my wife and I also, when we travel, we tend to stay at boutique hotels. We're not going to stay at the big brands. We want to stay at something that's unique and authentic. It's not unlike when you go to a town and you want to go out to eat, right? You're not going to go to a chain. You want to find the chef that's doing interesting things. So we were at a leadership conference, vision boarding. We were up in Maggie Valley, had rented a house, cutting out images, putting them on a board of what we wanted in our life. I was probably 46, and I found a picture of the Grand Budapest Hotel, that Wes Anderson movie that is just brilliant.
Yeah.
And I put it on my board, and I said, when I turn 50, we're going to get into hotels. We have 6 of them now, and so we just kind of did. And the thing that I like from a guest experience, with a restaurant, you get 2 hours. With a hotel, you get a lot more opportunities to make meaningful impact. And so I'm trying to, more so than restaurants, hospitality's commoditized for the most part.
Yeah.
Hyatt, Hilton, Marriott, and then even under those umbrellas, they each have 500 different brands that you really can't differentiate from one to the next.
Yeah.
Trying to bring some authenticity to that space is pretty fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've learned a lot, and some of it's been painful, like any startup. It would have been so much easier but now I love it. We've opened some really cool properties this year. The Rivet House in Athens, go Dogs, with Osteria Olio, an Italian restaurant. The Flatiron in Asheville, super cool old building.
I know.
Speaking of over budget and late, God bless everybody involved. The George in Georgetown. We've opened some real, 50, 60 room hotels. Very cool stuff. And it feels good. It feels like this year was so okay, we're in the hotel business. The first 4 years felt like we were pushing a rock up a hill.
God, I bet.
It's such a longer process,
well,
right?
If construction already is been doing
miserable.
Because you built the George, right? I mean,
it's ground up.
What,
Rivet House was an old denim warehouse, brick building.
Okay.
Flatiron, of course, was 100-year-old Flatiron building.
Are you okay? Because I know Georgetown well. My mom grew up there. If I'm on Front Street, am I?
We're on Front Street.
You're on Front Street. Okay.
On the water.
Okay.
We've got a restaurant called The Independent there. There was a family that had a retail seafood business for 80 years called The Independent. And, so many generational businesses that just didn't continue. So they closed while we were under construction. And we called the family and said, hey, would you mind if we called the restaurant The Independent, just as a kind of an homage to you? And they were really touched. It was pretty cool. So, it was Georgetown's, the reception's been awesome. We're having a lot of fun right now. It's been a hard year. We had some projects like the George and the Flatiron that were supposed to open last year that fell into this year. So the things we were already going to open this year, and that's where, man, I'll tell you, and you've met a lot of my team, to watch everybody just pull together and they just love each other. And I don't take a lot of credit for that. I'll come in to a meeting. You know, we're opening Oku and Alice Beach down on 30A next weekend.
Wait, Alice Beach.
So it's interesting. People have either heard of it or they
I
haven't.
mean, I've heard of it, but is it Panhandle or is
Yes,
it?
down
Okay.
by Seaside.
Yeah, okay.
So that 30A is that little stretch where it's a 2-lane road. The emerald green water is on the left, and the super expensive real estate's on the right. We've been looking around down Alice Beach. We've been looking there for 5 years. It's a development. It's a family from Birmingham that had 100 acres on the water. They were a steel family, and it was a cow pasture, and now it's really big, beautiful homes. And, you know, I'll drop in next Thursday, and everything will be exactly as it should be, and there'll be a dozen Indigo Roaders who are living in Airbnbs, and it's just so cool, man. And it's just wild to think about, like, when, in the beginning, I did all the training. I mean, it was me.
Yeah.
It was me and me. We didn't have any money.
Yeah.
I work with the best people. And they love what they do. And so my job is to make sure they continue to love doing it here.
Like attracts like, Steve. I mean, how do you decide where you're going to go? Like, how did you pick, why Georgetown?
A lot of it is
it data or is it intuition?
No, it's intuition.
Yeah.
You know, hotels are different in as much as, you know, if you're going to go get a loan from the bank, they want a feasibility report. So there is a lot more data on the hotel side. Restaurants is pure intuition. Just pure. We don't have the kind of data that hotels have. We don't have, I mean, there are star reports, feasibility studies. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. We don't have that. I go to Nashville and I drive around for a day. And I go, an Oku would do well in this neighborhood, but an Oak probably needs to go over here.
Mm-hmm.
I talk to the real estate network, see who's doing what. It's all intuition. And I, you know, I haven't batted 1,000%, but I'm batting like 850.
It's not bad.
You know, I mean, and a lot of it's fun though, but like what's so cool, Athens, I'll go back to Athens. We met James and Jessica Whitley, the owners of the Rivet House, and they had this dream to do this hotel. We were immediately enamored and like, yes, please let us be involved. That restaurant is so busy. So a small town like Athens, we opened Osteria Olio. We felt like, you know, doing a unique one-of-one Italian restaurant instead of doing Indigo, one of our brands, was really important. Hired an amazing chef, kind of let him do what he wanted to do with the menu. And the response, it happened in Bentonville too. Not just the response from the guest, but the staff. Super green, but hungry.
Yeah.
That's potent. When you can forget resume, because nowadays, post-COVID, there is no resume.
Yeah.
There's heart.
Right.
And if you're willing to like invest in that and train that, you get this loyalty and this excitement that I don't know that you can replicate from a server who's been doing it 15 years. Maybe you can. But like the staff in Bentonville we opened Junto, which is again a one-of-one sushi experience. They've never heard about hospitality and the 14 elements of the guest experience and so like when you can turn that light bulb on for people and then watch the market respond in kind, that's the best thing in the world, man.
That's amazing.
I mean, it is.
Is Bentonville, is that where Walmart is? Is that?
So yeah, we through a series of winding roads, this great group of folks out of Greenville, Windsor, Autry, who are hotel developers.
Greenville, South Carolina?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have an Oku and an Indigo, and they're our partners there. We all flew out to Bentonville, and we met Tom Walton, the grandson. and he and his brother Stuart. It's really fascinating. So Northwest Arkansas. It's kind of like Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill. You've got Fayetteville, where the University of Arkansas is. 20 miles away is Bentonville. 20 miles away is Rogers.
Okay.
They know that in order to attract the college kid at Harvard or MIT who's looking at Amazon or Microsoft, that Bentonville's got to be a cool place to live.
Yeah.
So they are underwriting the entire region. Crystal Bridges Art Museum, affordable housing, restaurants, hotels, music venues. Reminds me of Austin, Texas a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. They're building like some huge mountain biking mecca down there too, or something?
They both got into mountain biking in college. There's hundreds of miles of mountain bikes that the family maintains.
Yeah.
You can ride a bike up to Fayetteville, over to Rogers, down to Bentonville. The World Mountain Biking Championship is now in Bentonville.
Yeah.
So the hotel we just opened, the motto, where Junto and we did a tropical outdoor bar called Bar Kapoo, there is a bike valet in the hotel. So you can go downstairs, get a bike, one of the bike passes right outside, and you hop on the trail and go. And you walk around Bentonville, and it's a small town. And like the best coffee bars in the world are there. Everybody's on a bicycle. Everybody. So you can imagine the vibe. Everybody's healthy, happy. And so we met the Waltons, and Tom just was like, we need operators. We have the means. We just need people that believe in Bentonville. So we're doing 3 projects with them over the next.
Wow.
We're doing an Oak Steakhouse and a hotel in Rogers. And then we just signed on. Springdale is another smaller community. We're going to do a hotel. And I think we're going to do a pizza concept that we've never done before.
Golly, man. I can't believe I'm saying this. It sounds, I want to go to Bentonville.
You want
to
to live in Bentonville, man. I'm telling you, when I'm there, I'm like, I could totally live if it wasn't so far away from the rest of our world. But we love it. And everybody, it was so funny when I flew out there 3 years ago and I had breakfast with Tom, and it couldn't be a more nicer, humble, down to earth. And this is the largest retailer in the world.
Yeah.
Couldn't have been nicer. And was just like, we just really want to make this a great place to live. And I came back and I said Bentonville, and a few people are like, oh, yeah, Bentonville. For the most part, everybody was like, huh? What? Where? And now, like Forbes just wrote, now Southern Living, like you're starting to see the articles that the press is starting to pick up on it. I'm telling you, man, you'd live there in a heartbeat. It is super cool. Everybody's friendly. You literally can get it on a bike anywhere you need to go. It's pretty wild.
That's freaking awesome. Well, I'd heard about the mountain biking thing. I had a buddy a couple of years ago. It was like, went mountain bike. He drove out to Colorado and he was on his way back. He's like, I'm stopping in Bentonville to go bike. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What's in Bentonville? Other than Walmart? He's like, well, let me tell you. And he was telling me about
the bike trails,
the trails and the family.
It's
and all
unbelievable, man. It goes on and on and on and on.
Well, so, I grew up, Steve, here, but my grandparents were in Georgetown, and we would always drive down and we'd go through Florence, make our way down to Georgetown. And growing up as a kid, back, I was born in 74, so, late 70s, 80s, into the early 90s. I would get, not depressed, but it would always make me kind of sad driving from here to there, because you're going through all these towns that clearly at one point had something going on, and now there's boarded up and broken window. It was just, I'd be like, God, I would always think, what must it be like to live here? It must be it would make me sad thinking about what it was like to live there. Now even in Georgetown, I'd be going down there. I'd be like, not that Charlotte was a big city then; it was a big small town. But there's a lot more going on than there was in Georgetown back then. As a kid, I'm like, this looks like it would suck to live here. Then you get older and you start to appreciate what small towns bring, and then you've got folks like you that are investing into these towns and putting these cool things there, and like that is so. Just personally, I'm excited that there are people like you that are, in large part on intuition, making these bets on these towns that are so charming and have so much character and history, and will be the home for a lot of people, because next 10, 20, 30 years, people are going to keep moving down here. And all of a sudden, living in Florence or living in Georgetown is like, oh, this is friggin' awesome. Like,
I'm telling you,
old historic. And now we've got these, because I mean, even a decade ago, like, I mean, there really wasn't a lot going on in like Georgetown. Like, there weren't any like real, just there. If there was a restaurant there, it was people that are local, and there's still good stuff. I mean, one of my favorite restaurants in the world was Frank's Outback, and I think they're in town there now. And
God, I've eaten there for 30 years.
Yeah, and
we used to drive up from Charleston as kids and drink too much and drive back home. Don't drink and drive. I'm not. I mean, like, good Lord. I'm a big city kid. Like, I want the buzz and the excitement. And I will tell you, in the last 2 years, I'm like, man, a small town. I'm more and more being drawn to the mountains. The summers in Charleston are just so hot, man.
The summers up in Highlands are
pretty nice.
Bad, yeah.
But yeah, I'm being drawn more and more to. I'm like, man, if I just have an airport nearby, maybe we could just go ahead. My daughter's getting into high school, so nothing's happening for the next 5 years. 4 years, but I'm with you, and I understand the trend. And I will tell you, like, Town Hall in Florence, I'm so bad with dates. I think next year will be 10 years. The last 2 or 3 years, sales have just, like, not even post-COVID. This year, right now, last week, doing numbers bigger than some of our Charlotte restaurants, bigger than our Nashville restaurants, like $11,000 Tuesday nights.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, my God, that was like our busiest Saturday night 7 or 8 years ago.
Right.
And you're seeing it. And by the way, I'm super proud of that restaurant. Like, I would send anybody there with no hesitation. It's the team there does such a great job. But I haven't heard anybody else. I've seen that lately. Like, these small towns are really becoming more attractive. You're meeting people. Wait, you're from L.A.? What are you doing in Georgetown? Oh, we love it here. Like, people, and I don't know if it was the riots during COVID. I feel like people are craving that. I want to be in a small community where I feel connected. And where there's enough, I need amenities. I need a good restaurant, probably need a movie theater. Yeah. I need to get outdoors, either fly fishing on the water or hiking in the mountains. But I think you're going to continue to see small towns flourish like that.
I totally think you will, because you got to think like Florence, for example. I'm not surprised, because you got a lot of people moving there where all of a sudden, even with inflation and everything else, their cost of living compared to Long Island or whatever is, a third what it was. And so your property, your tax, everything else, you're like, well, we can freaking go out here. Like, this is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And there's the connectivity piece. You mentioned this earlier, and I agree. Listen, these devices,
they're terrible.
They're what I don't think we're as divided. Like, I think we all think we're so divided, but then when you go you go somewhere, I don't see that. I just think that these things amplify the loudest voices on both extreme sides of the political aisle. I think there are all these things that are just, like, the media is kind of designed to divide us because they want to create these tribes of people that they kind of like scare all the time, so they'll state out in so they can sell ads. Like that's their business model.
Of course.
And then these social media sites, sort of the same thing. Like the algorithm is like, I mean, they're addictive. Like they talk about, I mean, like they are massively addictive.
Like
in
the
their
tobacco
design,
industry
like
story.
tobacco
It's
industry.
the same. The people that created the algorithms knew that the dopamine would hit.
Yep.
I have a friend who's an attorney who's in a class action representing families. You know, we won't get into all that, but this was all done on purpose, by the way. There was no social media. The addictive part was not some sort of happy accident.
Oh gosh, everybody's addicted.
Whoops! It was all premeditated, and I'm on it every day. I mean, I'm not throwing stones, but we haven't let our daughter on social media, and she's 14. She's the only one not on social media. We are the worst parents in the history of parents because she's not on Snapchat yet.
Yeah.
And man,
you're the best parents. And it's a big freaking problem, man.
It's the depression, especially for a girl, you know, the comparison to other girls is like, and half of what they're seeing isn't even real, you know, but they believe that is the truth. And I will say that my silver lining for all of that, I tell my team, like AI, all of this, people are always going to want connection.
Yep.
And that's where hospitality shows up in the most meaningful way. And they're going to want human connection. They're going to want to sit across the table from their friends and be waited on by a human. And so I think we have job security, even as technology speeds up. I think in the restaurant and hotel business, I think people are still going to want that sense of well-being.
Yes.
That only hospitality gives.
Listen, you nailed it. We're as long as we're still around, we're realizing now, and it's just why I think people do move to small towns, and why we're starting to realize, like, wait a minute, like all this tech is whatever. It's there.
Yeah.
And it has its purpose, but people want this, what you and I are doing right now. They want connection. They want validation that they matter. They want, and that's what kind of hospitality is. Mm-hmm. There's no other industry that offers us that. Restaurants, hotels, particularly the independently owned or you know, like, look, you mentioned like, why don't, you know, you probably have people say, it's like, why don't you just sell to private equity and move on? Like, well, then what? Because private equity will strip out all they'll
destroy
cool
things,
and then that's what they do. And then so somebody else is like, and then they go start their own thing. This will never stop because we're never going to not want that hospitality. I think that the world you operate in has a really bright future because as I read about, like, okay, well, Chipotle is going to now have, like, you know, robots that make, like, is humans get replaced in that world?
They're going to have to for your burrito to stay $8.99.
To stay $8.99, and that's what's going to happen. Like, so over
no
there,
question.
But question. That's not what you provide. What you provide is a place to come and sit and have those moments, whether it's a death in the family or a reunion with friends or a date night or, frankly, like, it's the only. I've got 3 kids. My daughter's in college now, but when she's home in the summertime, we're all around. Like, the only time that we can actually all connect. It's really even hard, even over a home cooked meal now, because we're there and there's just this draw for these kids to get on their device or to go back. I have 2 boys that want to do that effing gaming all the time. Like, we just kind of have to go to a restaurant and just be like, all right, we're leaving our devices in the car. And then we always say this, like, why don't we do this more? Because when we have these moments, we realize how powerful and how potent they are.
Right.
But we have to go somewhere to have them now. And so I think that as the world of hospitality, the big world of hospitality kind of bifurcates into, like, one end is like, You may go through McDonald's in 5 years and there may even not be a human being there,
Right.
except for maybe some person who knows how to like fix the robots or whatever if they need it. And but then like over here we've got I mean, you may have restaurants one day where you're like, no phones allowed. Like, where it's just because we
human connection.
Yeah. And by the way, dude, like I take a stand on this stuff and I know nobody else will, but this is how I roll, man. Like,
wow.
That's it. Like 4 years now.
Mad respect.
4 years now. And, I don't run a software business. Like, but my problem is, see, I've got that addictive personality disease. I didn't like who I was with that damn phone. And I couldn't, it's just,
I understand.
I had,
all or nothing.
All or nothing. Just as an alcoholic probably shouldn't have a bunch of, a liquor cabinet in the home. I was like, man, I don't know. I don't like who I am with this thing, so I'm going to get rid of it. Right. And everybody's like, it'll last a month. I was like, you're probably right. But, dude, that's been like huge. So I'm like early 2000s guy. Like I have a laptop where I sit down for my emails and like I have all my my buddies, like our text strings for like iChat or whatever it is, like it all goes there, but it sits there. And this thing sits on my desk when I'm at home. And then like when I leave, it's like I got a phone and I got text, and it's kind of hard to send text on these things. You can do it.
Oh yeah.
So what
remember.
do I do? I'm on the phone. Like I just talk. I call, and I love that. Like actual conversation with actual people with inflection in the voice and no misinterpretation of what the text words meant, the tone you have with the I'm like, so anyway, so this is my way of like, I'm trying to lead us back to a place
I
of
think
like,
that's pretty brilliant.
The pendulum went way far and it needs to come back where it's like, we have just enough, but not so much in our face all the time.
Because now we're realizing how damaging it all is.
It is so.
I mean, the suicide rate in kids and just the stuff that they're consuming. I mean, so Snapchat, I hadn't been on it in years. I didn't even know it was still relevant. My 14-year-old, so her friends, they won't even text each other.
Yeah.
They will only talk on Snap.
Yep.
Because it disappears.
Yep.
That's where the drug dealers and the pedophiles are, because it disappears. And so the other day, because this is a big topic in our household, when do I get Snapchat? I just opened my account back up, and I was appalled at just the garbage. I mean, at least, with Instagram, I'm following who I've chosen to follow. I can't imagine being 11, 12, 13 years old.
Dude.
Looking at, I was... I'm glad I grew up in the 70s. I was on a dirt bike all day.
Yep.
Like we left in the morning, and when the street lights went on, we came home, and we managed to mooch lunch out of one of my kids. Whoever had the best snacks, we would end up at their house.
Yep.
I can't, I'm glad that
we were lucky.
Yeah.
We were lucky
totally.
for that.
100%,
We really were. I
100%.
really feel for these kids these days. Like, and they're the first, and like, they're the guinea pigs. Like my daughter's 20. I mean, like right about the time when, iPhones came out and she's a teen, she's 13, 12, whatever it was. It's like, do we give them a phone? Do we not? Like, no.
Right.
Like, now we sure as hell know. Like you can't, it's hard to unwind that. Like it is an addictive thing. Like it is a thing that is very hard to put down. And, but it does. I do think that, I feel like the digital world, it amplifies these loud voices of division and anger and F you and I'm on this extreme and I'm on that. I think most people are like somewhere kind of like right around in the middle.
Too.
And like most people, like, because when you actually sit and talk to people, you see what you see, like people yelling, people screaming, people rioting and all that stuff. But like you go places, you're like, most people are just fairly reasonable and just.
I think most people in our generation, Gen X, it's funny to me, right? Because the millennials and the boomers have been in the, sort of verbal volleyball culture wars, and then the Gen Zs. And I kind of, jokingly say, we're just the ones over here running shit. But when we die, who's going to run stuff? But I feel like most of the folks in our generation were kind of in the middle on things. We grew up where a Republican was Ronald Reagan, and even if you didn't agree with his policies, you weren't going to hate the guy. I mean, Clinton got a whole bunch of crap for his personal behavior, which now seems mild in comparison to but we all kind of grew up in an era where there was give and take. There was compromise. It's like, over here I'm probably pretty liberal, and over here I'm a little more conservative, but I'm not radical on either side.
Yeah.
Because there weren't radicals on either side. It kind of like, okay, now it's going to, George Bush is the guy, and now it's Clinton again. I don't know. We just grew up in a world where it wasn't so uncivilized to talk about politics. And now I think the thing that because going back to everyone's welcome at our table, I am not at all offended if you share all of your beliefs with me and I don't share them. That's not threatening to me. That's not offensive to me. Unless you've got some hateful, I don't care what you believe, I'm not down for the hate. Yeah. The hate is what saddens me because hate in a lot of ways is the opposite of hospitality. Right?
Sure, yeah. It's personal poison too.
What I find so sort of disappointing is the folks in any realm that come out and say, this is what I believe, and whether they're saying this indirectly or directly, and you need to believe everything I believe, or you're the enemy.
Yeah.
That's the thing that I'm like, how do we get,
right.
Like, I mean, because in the 80s, right? Like, as a kid in high school, you had the metalheads, you had the new age kids that were listening to like New Order and Depeche Mode. Punk was having this big moment. You had all these different groups, and we didn't hang out with each other, but we coexisted.
Just fine.
It was like, they're a little weird, but there wasn't. And now it's like, you better believe what I believe, or you're a racist or a bigot or a socialist and it's like, why do you need me to believe what you believe in order for us to be friends? I mean, at a base level, human beings, we end up, for the most part, with like-minded.
Yeah,
sure. But even today, like, I have friends who are way far right, and I'm like, I'm not there with you. Again, not down with the hate.
Yeah.
And I have friends that are, like, socialists, and I'm like, I'm not there either.
Yeah.
I mean, I am the American dream, right?
Yeah.
I mean, worked hard, built my way up. I'm kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
And we just don't, that doesn't really.
Well,
it certainly doesn't exist in the media.
No, it doesn't. I mean,
and
if you follow that stuff, you get really programmed. I had somebody tell me out in Colorado, I would never live in a red state. And I was like, wow, that's where we're at.
And that's going to get, that's going
to, I'm just,
and I think that's going to get more pronounced. Like, I have a...
That's such a...
Isn't that weird?
I can't imagine thinking that way.
I had a friend of mine that, he was in the Civil War, like, we're going to have guns and rioting. And I'm like, no, we won't, because law and order, no matter what your political belief, law and order will always win the day. But I did say, but what you're going to see more and more is people moving where their beliefs are aligned.
Yeah.
Because they want to feel comfortable. They don't want to feel challenged in their belief system. And I understand.
Well, it's where we go online. Like, we go to, and you follow, and then the algorithm says, you like this, and I'm just going to send that to you.
Reaffirm your own beliefs. We're all seeking that kind of external validation. It's when you don't receive that it becomes hate, that I'm like, you lost me.
You lost me.
You can, man, you can believe. That's the beauty of this country, right? You can love who you want to love. You can be who you want to be. just don't force it down everybody else's throat if it's not what you believe.
Well, we'll close with this. You mentioned that you're the embodiment of the American dream, and that is, I think about
I am. I mean, eighth grade education, entrepreneur.
This is,
dude.
Like,
I mean, dude.
But that's what this. I mean, this guy. All of this was founded on giving people this opportunity to go make it. And if the education system, by the way, for what it's worth, follows economic success. It doesn't precede it. We didn't build a great education system and all of a sudden we were a successful country. We were a successful country,
right.
And then the economics.
Correct.
So I am like, trust me, man, I'm paying out-of-state tuition right now, and I'm always an ROI guy, and I'm like, for Penn State, I'm like, yeah, but you could not go to school for 4 years and we could invest in starting a restaurant and figuring out how to screw up along the way to success. Like,
right.
I'm a trial and error guy. I'm a tinkerer.
Me
I'm a,
too.
Bottom up. Like, I don't know. Let's just go.
Well, you've done pretty well with Schedulefly.
Look, 17 years and 5 guys and no venture capital and, just same deal. Like, everybody else took that money and that's fine, but it was great when it was free. But you know what? Then you can't do things the way you want to do it.
Right.
Like, go get a bunch of VC money and like your culture is going to change. Oh, you don't need VC, private, like, do you really need that director of culture? Like,
yeah, no, they would gut our company.
They would gut it. So, but here's what I'm getting to is like, okay, so you got all this divisiveness, but then I'm like, yeah, but people are literally like dying trying to come to our country because it's so bad, like truly so bad everywhere else. Like,
yep.
Like they would love to have the opportunity for you to be mad at them for not agreeing with it. Like, okay, cool. Like,
right.
Go take you take an Uber and like, I've had so many Uber rides in the last year where somebody's like, I came from, the Congo or it's like,
I love asking anytime I'm in an Uber with someone that is an immigrant because I love hearing people's stories.
Yeah, where'd you come from? Why'd you come here? Do you love it here? I mean,
they love it here. They're like so grateful.
And then we got people that are like,
people are like, I hate this country, America, and I'm like, man, again, I'm not down for the hate.
It's
then
not
go
perfect.
Go somewhere else. We're imperfect.
We're imperfect.
God Almighty.
I mean, like there is no perfect place. There is no perfect system.
We're not even 300 years old.
We're not even 300 years old.
know?
Capitalism is pull more people out of poverty than any system ever. Is it perfect? Hell no. But is it
flawed.
Like the best thing going?
It is.
I'd say it is, and I'd say this country is too. And I think that, I bring this all back to, I truly, truly, truly believe that I want to keep having these conversations with people like you, and I want more people to hear these conversations because we need small businesses to be successful.
Amen.
And we need hospitality small business to be successful. There's no rebirth of any town like Georgetown or Florence or wherever or Bentonville. Like, what are they doing? They're going to try to find hospitality. Why? Because what do we really need? Like, we need to connect with other people who come from different backgrounds, who have different opinions, and be in a room and share and talk, not on a screen in our basement angrily typing. No, get the hell, like, get rid of that damn thing. Just go talk to people.
Yep.
And you'll learn, and you'll disagree, and you'll find things that you didn't know, that you didn't understand that person's perspective, and now you understand it better. But I just think hospitality is at the center of this all. I mean, if it's whatever our biggest industry is, government, and then healthcare, and then
us.
If we had less of these things and more good hospitality with good healthy food and good connection, effing healthcare industry wouldn't be as big because we wouldn't need it as much. Like, so anyway, I don't know. I mean, I'm a dreamer, and I know you are too. But I think
totally
that,
am.
You got to lead by example, and you can't complain about stuff. You got to go get inside it and try to lead people to a new place.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. And you have to. I think I don't ever want to lose my hope and my optimism for a better moment. I believe in the good in all of us. I think that so many people, like a 14-year-old kid in an abandoned house in downtown Atlanta, just needs that avenue of opportunity and somebody to say, I see something in you. And boy, I think hospitality is a great industry to lead by example. We're doing it. I just want to see, I just want people, if you're going to be in our industry, love it.
Yeah.
Don't talk trash about it. Don't go be somewhere else. It's a great industry. If I'm sitting here talking to you about what I've done, good Lord. I mean, like, woof. It's the best industry in the world.
I agree.
I hate when people trash it because it deserves so much more than that.
It does. That's why we gotta keep having these conversations. And this is the great part. This is I don't have a way to drive around and listen to podcasts anymore, and we have this podcast, and we want these conversations to be amplified. That's a great part of the technology, is that it gives you and I the opportunity to sit here in Charlotte and have this conversation, and hopefully tens of thousands of people hear this and maybe learn and maybe get inspired and maybe share it with somebody else, and something good
the hope
comes with it
as it gets passed on. And I mean, listen, people pass things on to me when I was, and still are, but especially when I was a young kid, I had some people that saw my passion. I didn't have much else. I used to say, look, there are a lot smarter people than me, but no one will work harder and be more enthusiastic.
Yeah.
And the Latin derivative of enthusiasm is spirit of the divine.
Love it.
Yes. Yeah, man.
Dude, what a great conversation.
Thank you. We've been here for 2 hours.
I know, I was going to say, I got to respect your time. It's 11:15, and so I'll let you roll. Thank you all for watching, listening. Share this, like it, whatever. Just keep coming back. More of this coming soon. But this is all time, man. Epic episode for this podcast. So thank you.
Well, thanks for asking.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Where do people find you? How about that?
Sure. The IndigoRoad.com is the day job. The purpose-driven job is Ben's Friends, bensfriendshope.com. You can find me there. I'm pretty accessible. We'd love to hear from you. Love to hear, at Ben's Friends, there's somebody that you can talk to 24 hours a day if you need help.
Good.
There's 20 Zoom meetings a week. Every day at 1:00, you literally one click and you're in a meeting. So yeah, that's where we're at.
And Say Grace on Amazon, still on Amazon.
Still on Amazon, still selling well. All the money goes to Ben's Friends. That little book, man. I had no idea when I wrote that book what that was going to come to mean for other people and in turn mean to me. But yeah, Say Grace, how the restaurant industry saved my life.
Love it. Steve Palmer, y'all. Thank you. See ya.
See ya.